I'm Dr. Rose Naziwa, a pediatrician working with Princeton Medical Center, Kajansi branch. Immunization is the process of making the person immune or resistant to a particular infection, infectious disease. Now, there are words there that I need to re-emphasize. The infectious disease. Infectious disease usually here refers to germs, those diseases that are brought about that by known germs or bacteria or viruses for which we have a remedy already made beforehand that can protect that individual. So what happens? So the immunization works through vaccines. So a vaccine in this case is either an inactivated or killed part of the organism, or a part of the organism, the structure usually either a protein that is got from the infecting organism, a bacteria or a virus, that when introduced into the person's body, the body recognizes it as an infecting organism. So when the body recognizes that part or the inactivated or weakened part of the disease-causing germ, it makes the body respond and produces cells or antibodies that then protect the individual from the actual disease-causing germ or bacteria or virus. So that is the key thing. So immunization is that process, but it works through vaccines that are introduced into the person's body to confer the protection that is required. Normally, for any protection against any particular germ, you need to be exposed. And we need to appreciate that children, by their nature, their body come into the world without prior exposure, other than the protection they get from their parents, their mothers, through the placenta while they are still in the womb. They come into the world, the bodies have never been exposed to all the billions of microorganisms that cause disease that are in our environment. So if you do not protect the child against those germs, you're actually making them vulnerable because their bodies they don't know what to do when they're exposed to certain things because they've never had it before. So if you do not vaccinate a child, you're putting them at risk, not only of getting the disease from that particular infectious organisms, but also its complications. Its complications may vary from death to even living, but with complications. Some germs, when they cause disease, take an example of measles. It can have long-term impact on the child's brain, that they become what we call mentally retarded, that they slow down in their mental capacity just because of a simple mistake you did of missing the vaccine. So some have long-lasting complications that cannot be removed. Some have immediate that can even go as bad as death. So it's crucial that we immunize our children from these infectious diseases. So what normally happens, like I said, children, when they come into the world, the only protection they know against disease-causing germs is what they get from their moms, either through the placenta before they're born, or those who are breastfed, they also still get some bit of protection from their mothers. So as you grow, you get exposed. Each time you get exposed, the body learns what to do whenever I come in contact with a particular disease-causing agent. So for adults, the way you respond depends on how big the infecting dose is. If I'm getting exposed, say, to 10 people with the disease, I may not be as at risk as I may be at a higher risk as compared to a person who's exposed to one person. Or if you're exposed to a person who has just got a disease at a time when they are very infectious, they are spreading too fast. It is not the same as a person who's getting in contact with me who is healing from the disease. So adults have had a longer time of being exposed, and their bodies have learned what to do when you get exposed to this infectious agent, and then they are able to protect themselves. Unlike in children, they have never been exposed. Their bodies are naive. They know nothing. So they don't respond appropriately when they're exposed to the infectious agent. So hepatitis B is one of the most highly infectious organisms. It's caused by virus. And that when you get infected with hepatitis B, the main feared effect is damage to the liver. And that damage may not manifest early, but it manifests later on as you grow, causing liver failure and liver damage. So hepatitis B itself is spread from body fluid, any body fluid, saliva, sweat, blood, so any body fluid that comes in. So we want to do it within 12 hours so that the child gets the maximum protection. Remember, the moment they are born, they are touched by our hands. I'm saying sweat can spread the virus. Within the moment they are born, we breastfeed them. And we know breast milk can also spread hepatitis B virus. We know we are pecking, we are hugging these children, so we have body fluids on them, and each of those can spread hepatitis B. So we want to do it before they get exposed to the source of the virus, which is the hepatitis B virus. No, it's mostly hepatitis B vaccine that's recommended within the other 12 hours. Of course, if you can't give it within 12 hours, we still have a window. Like in our immunization program in Uganda, we give hepatitis B at 6 weeks, 10, and 14. It doesn't mean what we are doing is not valid. But areas where we have a high prevalence of hepatitis B, it's recommended that you do it within the first 12 hours to maximize the protection of the newborn child. When should the baby be immunized? So immunization should start right from the time the baby is born. Different countries have different immunization schedules they follow. Of course, those schedules are followed to capture the greater part of the population. So, like I said, different countries do different things. Some of them do hepatitis B right at birth. In our country, we do oral polio vaccine and BCG. BCG is to protect you against tuberculosis. The same things I said, exposure. TB is spread when we are talking like this. I can easily spread to your TB if I do have it. And when this child is born and goes into the community, they need to have that first protection, because you don't know the granny who is going to carry this child. The auntie may be having tuberculosis, but it may not be causing the aunt any disease, but to this newborn, it will be a source of disease. So there are priorities that different countries choose, and Uganda, its priority is BCG, because we know we have a high burden of tuberculosis, so we protect children as early as they are born. Once they are born, we want to give them BCG. And in polio, because we know what polio can do, people who have been made lame because of polio, so we give the first dose of polio at birth. And then we give the subsequent doses to boost up their immunity and maximize the protection you can get from the vaccine. Maybe I'm going to answer the why we need more than one vaccine and why more than one dose. In the world we are in, there are billions of disease-causing germs or organisms. Why I say billions? Because there are too many. Some we know, some we don't even know. So we cannot, so why we choose certain viruses or bacteria over others is how bad they affect the individual. You find that those germs that are highly fatal, those that cause a lot of death, those that are highly damaging to the individual, whose impact is worse than others in terms of the nature of the disease they cause, are the ones that are prioritized. So, since there are different germs, different organisms causing them, that's why you need different vaccines. So you need a vaccine against polio, you need a vaccine against hepatitis, you need a vaccine against diphtheria, you need a vaccine against whooping cough, measles, rubella. So those are some of those diseases whose impact we know is really harmful and dangerous to the individual, and not only the individual, even the family and the community at large. So that's why we need different vaccines. Now, number two is, why do we need more than one dose of the same organism? To boost the immunity. When you get the first dose, the body recognizes, oh, there is some infecting agent, much as it's weakened, and it produces a sort of way of protecting itself against it. But over time, that protection weakens. So you get a booster or the subsequent doses to strengthen the initial protection you got from the disease. So it's to make the protection even stronger from that particular germ that you've been protected against. So before a vaccine is released into the public for human consumption, there are series of work, rigorous work that goes on even before it is tried onto the individuals. So research work starts right from the lab to try to identify which agent, what do we use of this organism? Do we use a bit of its structure? Do we use the weakened part of it to try and mount an immune response? This is then carried, after they have studied that on the lab, they put it to lab animals. For example, they could try it on rats in the lab. After they have tried it on rats in the lab and they found how it responds, they bring it to a few volunteers who are done. Then it is tried on these few volunteers and they see how it reacts. Once they've done from a few, that's when they bring it to the wider community. So all those processes are meant to check for safety and to make sure that these vaccines are not harmful to the individual. Definitely some of them still remain with side effects, but which side effects can be manageable or would be tolerable. So that's why for every vaccine, there are known side effects that we document. But those vaccines shouldn't be harmful to the individual or causing death or permanent damage. So it's the rigor of the research that goes in there before the vaccine is released to the public that ensures its safety. Definitely, there will be some side effects. But like I say, those side effects are minimal. For example, vaccines that are administered as an injection, there would be a side effect of pain at a site. That's not comforting. Some vaccines cause a slight change of temperature. There may be a fever, but not a fever that is too high, that lasts days and days. So yes, they will cause some side effects that are called minimal side effects. And those side effects will depend on what particular vaccine you have received. Not all vaccines cause a fever. Not all vaccines are given as an injection to cause the soreness at the injection site. Those that are given as oral drops, they wouldn't have the soreness. So the side effect would really depend on the individual vaccine the child has received. Yeah. So the side effects do not happen to everyone. It's only a few. Actually, it's the minority who get the side effects. And we think like for the fever, the common vaccine that's been thought to cause the fever is the pertussis. Pertussis is in the vaccine that is given at 6, 10, and 14 weeks. So the component they use in that vaccine, as the body is reacting to it, the fever comes as a response to the body recognizing that there's something foreign that has come in the body. So it's not a bad thing. It's not that it happens on only those who have no immunity. It's how your body responds to this agent that has been introduced in it. So depending on how child A and child B behaves, that's how they get the fever. But it's the minority. Not every child that gets the pertussis vaccine would get a fever. They would not. Allergies to vaccine depends on the other components of the vaccine, what was put in the vaccines. In some vaccines, there are some protein contents that they would clearly tell you that a person who is allergic maybe to proteins or eggs should not use this vaccine. So it depends on the individual component of that vaccine. And if you know your child is allergic, then it's important for you to bring it forward to the health worker who is going to vaccinate your child so that they double check and make sure that that particular vaccine does not have components that this child may be allergic to. The common allergens we have in our setting are proteins, and we usually pick them with eggs, people who are allergic to eggs, people who are allergic to milk products. But in the vaccines, your main fear are those egg-related derivatives that may be responsible for the allergic reaction. Fever in babies. Fever is the body's way of telling you that there's a foreign particle in my body, a foreign agent that has entered my body. So when anything foreign enters our bodies, especially in terms of germs or disease-causing organisms, which in this case may be bacteria, viruses, commonly those are the ones that would cause the body to get a fever. The body's immunity or protective mechanisms respond by producing chemicals. Those chemicals are meant to destroy or kill the invading microorganisms as the body has recognized it. So in that process, those chemicals that are released into the bloodstream by the body protective mechanisms are what then will cause the body temperature to change. The high temperature is also meant to help kill this invading organism. So it's two-way. The body changes the temperature thinking maybe this high temperature will not allow these infecting organisms to grow and thrive in my body. So in the process, it is protecting itself against the invading organism. So that's why anything that easily happens in a child can easily come up with a high fever. So in Uganda, the national immunization schedule starts with vaccines at birth. And at birth, we start with oral polio vaccine, and we add on BCG. BCG is to protect you against tuberculosis. So that is usually given at birth. Anytime from 0 to 14 days, we get those vaccines. So it doesn't mean if my child is born at home or in a place where I can't get a vaccine, I have missed the opportunity. For as long as it's within 14 days, you can take that child to a nearby health facility and you will get the vaccines. And in Uganda, there are many centers that give the vaccines. The mentality is to be stuck that you only get vaccines where you delivered from. That's not true. Sometimes you deliver from hospital A, but you're actually residing far away from that particular hospital. So those vaccines, the government provides them, and they are available in all the nearby facilities. So after birth, the next vaccine is given at 6 weeks. At 6 weeks, we give oral polio vaccine, 1, as labeled on the chart. We also give the pentavalent vaccine. Pentavalent vaccine has 5 organisms that they are trying to protect you from. The 5 are hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenza type B, there's diphtheria, there's pertussis, and tetanus. And now they also added on the pneumococcal vaccine. So you'll find a child at the 6-week vaccine, they receive 2 different injections. One injection is for pneumococcal, which protects you against pneumonia and some forms of meningitis. But also there's the pentavalent, which I've already explained the package. So those are the 2 different injections they receive at 6 weeks, plus the oral drops that are meant to protect you against polio. Then there is also another oral drop that is added, that is rotavirus. Rotavirus is to protect you against diarrheal illnesses. The diarrhea caused by rotavirus. So those will be the 2 different drops that will be put in the mouth. Then at 10 weeks, they would repeat those same things. They will repeat OPV, that's oral polio. OPV means oral polio vaccine. They will receive the pentavalent, which I've talked about earlier. They will repeat the pneumococcal. And then they will repeat the oral polio again and rotavirus. Then at 14 weeks, we receive another dose of oral polio vaccine. We receive another dose of pentavalent, which makes 3 doses of the pentavalent vaccine. Then they will repeat the pneumococcal. We do only 2 doses. And then they will repeat the polio vaccine, but this time they'll give you the injectable one, the booster protection. And then after the 14 weeks, the next vaccine is at 9 months. 9 months, our current schedule gives you protection against rubella and measles. So that's what is in the 9-month injection. Of course, I'm not talking about the 6-month one, because that's when you come in for vitamin A. So I don't want to label that as a vaccine per se, but it's also important to see, is your child growing well? Are they attaining the skills they should have attained for their particular age? Do they have any challenges we could pick up and correct? So it's important for us to follow the schedules and child health well-being appointments as scheduled. So usually you receive the first vaccine once you delivered, if you delivered in a hospital setting. Even if you've not delivered where there are vaccines, within the first 14 days, once you visit the facility, they'll give you the first dose, and they should always schedule the next dose. When do you expect the next dose? So they always do. We have immunization cards that are issued, whether in government or private facilities. So they will always indicate when the next vaccine is due. So just make use of that card, look at it, and you'll be able to follow up on schedule. Exactly, and that appointment is written even beforehand. As you're getting today's dose, we clear a document when the next appointment will be. So it's up to you to to keep in mind that and follow up that appointment.
Now, Dr. Nazua, what if my baby is ill on the day of appointment?
So if your baby is ill, it's important to report to the facility, because it doesn't mean that every illness is an automatic cancellation of the immunization. There could be something that can be done, or the immunization may be delayed to a different appointment. So please don't take it upon yourself to say, my child is ill, now I have to miss this vaccine. Get in touch with a health worker who will advise you accordingly, because for some illnesses, they are minor, and we can go ahead and give the vaccines. Some we need to manage the illnesses first before the vaccine. So let's be in touch with our managing health workers for the best of our children. So the immunization schedule is just set as a standard for the whole nation to follow, of 0, 6, 10, 14, 9 months. But if for any reason a parent was not able to bring the child, for as long as the child is under 1 year, we still have an opportunity to do what we call catch-up immunization. We have an opportunity to make sure this child gets the protection they need to get. I'll take an example. If a child comes at 2 months, they've never received any vaccine, I'll start from there and start giving them the vaccines they should have received at 6 weeks. And then I'll start giving the gaps in between of 4 weeks for the subsequent doses until you finish the immunization schedule. So it's not a must that it's written in stone that if you miss at birth or the first 14 days, you can't catch up. Get in touch with the health workers and ask about catch-up immunization, which is still valid for any child below 1 year. So there are certain conditions where we can defer immunization. And that deferring immunization is dependent on 2 things: the kind of vaccine we are using and the health condition of the child. So we know that there are certain conditions in which, for example, the vaccine they use is a component of the live virus, and we are not sure how the person's immunity would react. So there are some of those that have been put as a caution to be avoided. And one condition in children that we are reserved to vaccinate are those who are non-HIV positive children. If a child is tested and they are non-HIV positive and they have not received certain vaccines, for example, BCG, we prefer to hold it off because we are not sure how the immunity is going to react. There are other vaccines like yellow fever. If a person is non-HIV positive and their immunity is still very weak, we defer yellow fever. So it's on a case-by-case basis. But usually it's what kind of vaccine and what does the child have. Like for children with cancer, if they are on strong drugs that are suppressing their immunity, there are certain vaccines you may put off. So it's not something that applies to the general public. It's on a case-by-case basis, and that's why I say it's crucial that the parents discuss with the health workers what is the child's condition, what do they have in particular, and are they eligible for the particular vaccine. There's a lot of myth and misinformation out there in the public about vaccines. Of course, there's a lot with social media, there's a lot of information that is maybe right, that may be wrong, but most of them is wrong information that's impacting our communities negatively. People are against vaccines. I think partly because they do not know, they've not seen firsthand what those illnesses, some of those infectious diseases can do to an individual. As pediatricians, we advocate for vaccines because we have seen it firsthand, but with the patients we managed, what some of those infectious diseases can do to a child. And so we advocate for it because we know the benefits. I would not say that vaccines cause lameness. Maybe in the past, there could have been some individuals that got lameness, but surely that case needed to be investigated to the last minute to find out what went wrong. Sometimes it could be errors with handling, where, because once a vaccine is prepared, there are certain conditions that must be met, how it is transported, how it is kept, how it is administered. So if a vaccine, if there's some failure, so that chain is what we call the cold chain, where a vaccine is maintained at the appropriate temperatures from the beginning to when it is given the individual, in this case the child. So if you fail along the way, if you fail in that vaccine chain, then yes, you may get complications that some of them may not be anticipated. So that may have happened. How far true that is, I surely can't tell, and I don't know the answer to that. So if there's any side effect, that's why there's always clear reporting of vaccine adverse events. So if you take your child for vaccination and there's an adverse event, a side effect you notice in your child, be it swelling at the side that doesn't go away or failure to walk, report it back to the facility. Sometimes it's a mistake with injection. If it is injected in the wrong place or in the wrong site, that can happen. Not because of the vaccine, but where the vaccine was injected. So we really have to do our due diligence, reporting what is not acceptable about your child who received the vaccine, and then the concerned bodies should be able to investigate and go to the root cause of that problem. So COVID-19 vaccine, it's a vaccine that we all need. Why do I say we all need? Because we've seen the devastating effects of COVID. We believe with that vaccine you'll be protected from the severe disease that comes with COVID. That is the breathing difficulties, the lung damage that comes with COVID-19. Currently, the vaccine is not yet authorized for children. It's just because there isn't enough research yet to tell us how the vaccine reacts in the children, what effects it does to them, and how they respond to it. So the current research is only available in adults. And once we get more information on what happens in the children, then I believe it will trickle down to them. So the priority now are the adults who have been found to suffer from the severe disease. So we believe with this vaccine, it will help reduce the death and the impact of the disease not only in the individuals, but also in the wider community. Once we vaccinate more people, then the bigger community will also be protected.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank UBC for thinking about such a crucial topic. Immunization is important. For those of us who have been around for more than 20, 30 years, you surely do not recognize any cases of polio of late. The people you're seeing who are having any polio-related illness are all much older. I think that's enough testimony to the benefit of vaccines like polio, because polio vaccine has been around and we believe we are almost hitting elimination targets for polio. With that in mind, as a health worker who has seen what disease does to little children, infectious diseases like measles, like TB, it's important for us to immunize all our children. Forget about the social media anti-vaccine campaigns. Think about your individual. It may be that one child who gets the bad effects, but the effects will be last long and they will be affecting you as an individual. So let's all be advocates of vaccines for our children, for our families, and for our community. Thank you very much.